fun part. But we should be live now. I'm just double checking, but I will assume it is working. We are the Live Before Lock show with your old pal Emac and Chris Spags. We're going through MLB today. We at 7:30. Lest you forget, you've got lock for NASCAR. And get your lineups in just in case weather goes sideways there. I don't think it will, but it was touch and go there for qualifying. They're down in Richmond. MMA goes off in 11 minutes for the full slate. You have till, I believe, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock West Coast for the 8 or 9 game televised slate. We do have projections for both popularity as well as performance projections there behind the paywall. We have NASCAR projections and popularity. And then we've got baseball. We've got hockey. We've got NBA. We're set here, Spags. We literally have every sport. I'm trying to play every sport possible today on DraftKings, and I think I have, unless there was tennis. I didn't do tennis today, but I have lineups in every other sport.
That is diversity. You're a renaissance man with your lineups. But you know that is also available to you. If you use that promo code Live Before Lock, get all that stuff for half off your first month. I was pantomiming all the sports as you went. There were just so many sports, and I felt like I had to do something.
All right. Well, we'll turn the con back over to you here, and I will ride shotgun. I will be the loyal sidekick.
So let's do it. We obviously on Saturdays we don't have a deeper dive because those guys have better things to do than go game by game on a Saturday. So we'll do it here for you. We'll take the brave hit. We got to hit on this Cardinals Reds game up first. Both teams projected for 5.2 runs and 5.3 runs respectively. It's a matchup of Tanner Roark and Adam Wainwright. Adam Wainwright actually starting the year pretty well. Not doing a bad job. XFIP pretty low to start the year, under 3.6 to start the year. Home run rate also pretty low. Hasn't given up one at all. The Reds starting pretty poorly versus righties overall. So I don't know how this game is going to get the runs, and there's going to be a ton of ownership on it. I have some exposure to it, but I actually don't mind Wainwright as a pitcher, and I have some Roark exposure too because this total feels really high for this game. I know it's a positive park factor being in Cincinnati, but I'm not dying for this one.
It's actually in Mexico City, or pardon me, it's in Monterrey, Mexico. Monterrey, Mexico. This is
that would explain it then.
Yep. So that's why the weather. I made the same mistake this morning. So I was looking at one site saying it was 90 degrees with the wind blowing out. I looked at another, and I kept going back to Cincinnati. And I'm like, it's 60 degrees and there's 6-mile-an-hour winds, and I'm looking at weather.com and everything, and they pointed out to me that it's actually going to be in today and tomorrow is a 2-game series in I forget what the name of the stadium is, but basically it's where the Mexican League's Monterrey franchise plays, and it is a stadium that has outfield dimensions of a normal Major League Baseball park. So it's at 1,000 feet, but the wind is blown out, and it is going to be warm. So it should be an improved hitting environment. Not to the extent of Coors Field, because this is, again, not Mexico City, which is actually higher than Coors Field, but this is just at 1,000 feet. So
that would explain it then, I guess.
Yeah.
That changes the equal. Yeah, for some reason, I don't pull locations with my source. I just have home and away. So I did not realize that. So that's helpful to know. I guess that would explain it better then. So I have stacks still. I'm still with it. I do think Wainwright's missing enough bats where I don't hate the exposure I have to him regardless. I think it makes Roark a little bit less appealing overall. But how much are you doing with this game, Mac? Because it is a high total. And if it is in Mexico, as you claim, allegedly, then
Estadio de Baseball Monterrey is where it's at. So the baseball stadium of Monterrey, for those of you that, no high school Spanish, but you could probably
a
figure
stadium
that
near and dear to my heart, of course. Old Monterrey, Estadio Monterrey.
Yes. So in any event, this is actually one that I wrote up for my stacks. Now, the reason I did this is because the Oakland and Texas game, I'm worried about that one getting rained out. Otherwise, I would have done that one. But I'm highlighting this one because of the wind going out there to left center. This is the first of the two-game series. These guys did not play yesterday. It was travel day for them, so they were the only two teams that did not play on Friday. I've said, though Wainwright has been respectable through his first 2 starts this season, the 37-year-old has racked up a lot of mileage on his arm during 14 seasons and is nowhere near the pitcher he was between 2009 and 2014 when he received enough Cy Young votes to have 4 top 3 finishes in that 5-year stretch, along with all 3 of his All-Star appearances. His fastball's down. This is the key part, Chris. His fastball's down 2 to 3 miles per hour over it is at any given beginning of the season for the last 3 years. So that's a little scary. It's averaging 88 miles per hour. It's topping out at 91. That's not good. We would say muy malo if we were down there south of the border. See what I did there? Look at that. I remember my high school Spanish from nearly 30 years ago. So there we are. But I do like, I haven't looked at their lineups, but I said, Votto, Puig, Suarez, Scott Schebler, and then Dietrich's pretty cheap on Yahoo and FanDuel. So I'm liking that, but this is not as much as I liked the Yankees this morning or Boston this morning, etc. So I suspect tonight I'll probably have about 20% stacks from this game. So reasonable considering we have, 7 games on the slate.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think overall, it looks like the highest owned guy, at least on DraftKings right now. And we are going to talk about all the sites as we go and try to reference them equally as we get through it. Of course, DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. And if you're not playing Yahoo, by the way, Yahoo is very similar to DraftKings in terms of having 2 pitchers. So if you're trying to get over there, it's a good site to add to your repertoire. But yeah, I think that checks out. The ownership going to be pretty high for Puig, going to be pretty high for DeJong. Those guys are both at 35%, unless actually there's been another update, which let me double check. Nope, no updates yet. So yeah, I think overall those guys look pretty highly owned. So I don't mind getting away from them a little bit. And just the stack overall, like it's tough because that weather in Mexico, EMAC, is going to be very summer baseball. And there are not a lot of spots today that would fit the criteria of being summer baseball weather. So I see matching the field here, but going above it seems like a bad choice to me.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell because then you got to decide where your other stacks are going to go in this one. So I ran a crunch of, I only did 20. I'll run one of 100 here, but it looks like I'm probably going to cap out on a bunch of different teams at about 20 to 30%, which is fine. That's when I do that, I'm running 2 4-4 stacks. So I really, if I were to run 100 lineups, I really have 200 stacks. So it's more looking at 200% basically compared to just 100. If you want to look at it that way, and then I'll run some 5-3s here and see what's coming in. But with the remainder of this game, I think is quite interesting. Going to the other side here as well. If you look at our, that's a weird note. Hang on one sec here. My apologies. Someone's saying that they're not seeing us. I don't think they're on the right link because chat is going a mile a minute here.
Yeah, I'm actually watching us on the video and we're fine unless there's some.
Okay, perfect. I know there was Eddie's show went out under the hockey banner today. There's been a couple hiccups here and there. Anyway, Tanner Roark, former Nationals pitcher, so I got to see him a lot. He's an adequate starter, but not overly exciting. Has marginal ground balls, marginal fly balls, marginal strikeout rate. I think today I said he is like a 3.5 starter on a normal major league roster, meaning he's not quite a 3, but you're still happy to have him in your rotation as a guy that's going to eat some innings. So looking here at the guys going against him, for me will be Carpenter, Goldschmidt, DeJong, and then I don't mind going to Ozuna batting cleanup there. He is doing better this year than he had in his prior year in with the Cardinals, so that's encouraging to see. And then if you need a catcher, you still have Yadier Molina here. He's 3,900 on DK, 13 on Yahoo. I'm so on that one.
Yeah, I think the 2 through 4 of the Cardinals side is probably the most appealing to me. But I think there are a lot of ways to go with it. And again, if we are going to have this hot weather down there in the hitting environment, I think it certainly checks out to try to stack this a couple different ways and hope to capture it. And if you do with any sort of wraparound or bottom of the order stacks, which there has been value at this year with the Cardinals and in general, Colton Wong has had some big days here and there, even though he's fundamentally not that fantastic of a hitter. That is an approach that's going to be much lower owned than the top few guys who are going to be much higher owned. EMAC, let's move on to the next game with Cleveland and Kansas City. So Cleveland is a team who I am stacking quite a bit here because I do not buy into Homer Bailey. On a slate in which Homer Bailey is projected to be over 50% owned, I want to try to leverage against Homer Bailey. His swinging strike rate was actually up quite a bit to start the year so far. He's at 12.8% so far this season. He's been at 9.3% over the last year and change. So certainly a big jump, but I'm assuming it levels out because he's still giving up the same amount of hits. He's actually still giving up the same amount of home runs, more home runs recently this year than he has overall. Striking out guys more, but I don't know. Cleveland's got to bounce back at some point, and Homer Bailey's got to be worse. And I think this could be the day where it happens. So that's the main thing I'm looking at here. I also don't mind going against Jeffrey on the other side, especially with lefties. But what are you doing in this one, EMAC?
So in this one, I don't mind rolling out with Homer Bailey as my. Oh, we just got a new ownership, by the way. I don't mind rolling out with Bailey as my number 2. Now he's changed. Now he's 31% on DK, so that's come down. Verlander's at 54. We'll talk about Verlander. The reason I'm not as worried about Homer Bailey is I need to see it from Cleveland before I'm going to worry about it. Now, what I'm hoping from Bailey is basically a quality start or 6 innings and 4 earned runs. I would live with that. He's changed up his pitch mix just a little bit, but it's hard to tell because it's only been a couple starts, so it's hard to say that's official or it was just happened to be the way they, the catcher called the game or whatever their game plan was. But for me, his $5,800 price tag is the one that is somewhat appealing, but we don't really have to have that today with the way pricing is working out, in my opinion. So I'm glad to see it drop down to 30%. That's let me just double check that. I think that's about where I set him on my cap, because like you, I didn't want to go. What are they doing? Oh, Fantasy Cruncher, you're getting all these new these new fancy bells and whistles, and you're messing with your old pal here. Yeah, I've got him at 42%, so I'll probably tamp that down just a little bit because I want to work in some more Justin Verlander.
Yeah, no, that seems fair to me. I think, Homer Bailey, I'm at about half the field based on this new ownership projection, which I'm comfortable with. I felt a little better about it when he was over 50, but this is still the Indian stack. I'm still buying in here. Now everybody under 10% in our projection ownership. And again, you can get in there with promo code live before locks, get half off your first month. But yeah, I think to me, there are a couple ways to stack it here, which I'm intrigued by. I think the Indians are just due for positive regression and Bailey's due for negative regression. And that's sort of how I shake out with it overall. What about the Kansas City side? Because there are a couple guys there. Alex Gordon jumps out to me as being really interesting. As I mentioned, Jeffrey Rodriguez overall just much worse versus lefties. Doesn't strike them out at all. Just bad xFIP. So really just not a good pitcher versus lefties. Gordon's smashing everything so far to start the year. So I do like Kansas City a little bit, but what are you doing? Do you have any Jeffrey? Do you have any Royals?
So here's the one issue I have with Jeffrey is he's got like somewhere between 50 and 70 innings pitched in the major leagues. He was with the Nationals last year. He's bounced around in the minors, has not been a great pitcher, doesn't have any one particular skill set that he can lean on that would make him elite. I think he's probably better suited for long relief or fifth guy spot starters. So I think your assessment of looking at a couple of the guys against him is very reasonable. The guys that I would like among them would be Mondesi would be 1, O'Hearn would be 2, and then I think you can coin flip Alex Gordon and Jorge Soler. They have similar numbers from a power perspective against righties, but of course Soler is a righty, Gordon is a lefty, so Gordon does have that platoon advantage. But I think for me it'd be Mondesi, O'Hearn, and then one of those guys. And I'm a little lower on Whit Merrifield today. I got to figure out why he's not popping into more of my lineups.
Yeah, O'Hearn actually is a pretty good call. He's got a ton of power, 340 isolated power over the last year and change versus lefties. And again, Jeffrey giving up a lot of hard contact. Well, I guess not a lot of hard contact, but giving up a lot of contact in general, just not getting lefties out. So O'Hearn can be a guy who has some value and an interesting one-off play. It's hard to give up first base to O'Hearn, I think, if you're not stacking it. But yeah, I think that's an interesting approach. Let's go into the next one. We got a Braves team as the highest total on the day at 5.6 runs going against Jason Vargas, who's just been getting beat up, but does seem like he's due for some sort of positive regression. Just his numbers have been terrible to start the year, but that's also was the case last year. He started very terribly, then eventually leveled out and actually got pretty decent towards the end of the year. On the other side, Sean Newcomb going against the Mets team is striking out a lot versus lefties so far this year, but they've also been pretty competent. So I don't know that I want to target them, but I am going with a lot of Newcomb because I think he has some strikeout upside, even if he does give up a few runs here. And Newcomb also starting the year pretty poorly here. I don't know. I have a lot of Newcomb. I have a lot of Brave stacks. I have less Met stacks than I had yesterday, which were fun. What are you doing in this one?
Looks like I'm getting about 30% Mets stacks. Again, would be like 15% of my overall stacks. So it's not a bad way to go. Newcomb is someone I think we can definitely look to, and in the right situation, he is I think a very talented pitcher that is getting better and learning how to pitch more than just relying on his stuff, as they say. When looking at the Mets, they are a much different team this year than they were in the past. The additions of, but he's not in the lineup, Robbie Cano and getting Alonso in the mix here, who he just seems to mash. Of course, he's got a very limited 50 at bat sample size. Davis isn't too bad. And oh, is Travis d'Arnaud healthy now? Shocker of shockers. There he is. But on this one, I would lean a little bit more towards Newcomb just because I think the bottom of that order doesn't have much power. And even though they're sitting there with the platoon advantage, but Broxton, Rosario, Lagares, not overly concerning to me in this one. And then the pitcher will be in the mix as well. So I think leaning towards Newcomb is the way to go. Vargas is someone that if he can stay out of trouble, he is a good pitcher. This is a gauntlet of a lineup that he's got to run, though, between Albies, Donaldson, Freeman, Acuna, Dansby, Swanson, Johan Camargo. Those guys all have 200 or better ISO over the last since the beginning of last year, and they probably between them are averaging between 150 and 220 at bats. So it's a decent enough sample size. I'm just a little more worried about Vargas in this one, and that kind of leads me back to Homer Bailey, which is, Homer Bailey gets a slight nod because he's not facing the Braves. So.
Yeah, I just, like to me, if you're going to go to Vargas, and I think I have 10% Vargas. I'm doing a 20 max again today, which has just been my approach to kind of get my feet wet with baseball, start the year, all NBA still going on. And I'm at about, I think I'm at 10% Vargas and 15% Bailey. That feels about right to me. I think Vargas is just due to be less terrible. And this is really not, you're right. This is not the lineup for him to be less terrible with, and a really bad team total going against him. But under 10% owned at that cheap-ish price, the same cheap-ish price that Bailey's at, I don't hate it as a tournament play. If you're MMEing, I would have a hard time doing it in a single entry, though. That much is, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, and that's good. And I know it for those because we have a nice crowd here tonight. But for those of you that are kind of new, and it seems like Chris and I are ending up on opposite sides of everything. It's baseball. I mean, 10% of the time they're going to suck. 10% of the time they're going to be awesome. You don't know when the third and the third and the third for starters of their 30 starts. 10 will be bad, 10 will be good, and 10 will be meh. And then it's the guys like Verlander that'll have 20 good ones or 25 good ones, or DeGrom or people like that. So these middling guys, if their quote stuff is working, they're going to sail through the lineups. We just never know exactly when that's going to happen. And this is a bit of a gauntlet, but I don't dislike Vargas as a pitcher, particularly when he's in a good matchup or in Citi Field, etc. This one's just a little tough for me to get there. But that said, let's go look at the old crunch percentages here. Vargas is on 1% of my lineups.
All right. Yeah. I can't begrudge that. I think I wouldn't advocate for a lot of Vargas today. I think it was our show last week where I was more in on Vargas last week because I thought he just was going to be a better pitcher. And it seems like we're in the exact same spot as last year, which, I mean, data wise, you can't ever really quantify that, but that might just be the case that he's just going to be a bad early year pitcher moving forward, or possibly he's just going to be that bad pitcher forever. But as a limited exposure guy, I don't hate it, mostly because I think Bailey is going to be a bad play. And I think I'm comfortable giving some Vargas a shot just because he's been so bad that eventually it levels out and water finds its depth. And I'm hoping that would be the case. But I also have I have more Brave stacks than Vargas, and I would think that's certainly the logical approach. Which Braves would you be getting the most, T-Mac?
I just hit crunch again because I felt that 70% Justin Verlander and 68% Bailey probably was the main reason why I wasn't getting as much Vargas. So in turn, that looks great at your pitchers, but then you start looking at your stacks and you're getting the bottom of the order, and it's like, oh, that's not what I had in mind here. Looking over to the Braves, I am getting I've got 20% Acuna, I've got 30% Donaldson, and I've got 25% Albies. Nobody else is above 10%. And I see somebody asking about Freeman in the chat on FanDuel. I think he's fine, either as your first baseman or utility on FanDuel. Freeman, if you go look at his lefty-righty splits, he's one of those guys that's, you know, pretty much elite. He's like up there with Donaldson, you know, who's very fine against lefties and righties. Over his last 266 plate appearances against lefties, Freeman has a 400 WOBA and a 220 ISO. So he is in that vaunted 400, 200 club that over there at FanVice, our friends Dave Loughran and Manny Laura sort of invented. So yeah, he's in a phenomenal spot here. Don't worry about him in any sort of platoon issues.
Yeah, he and Christian Yelich are two guys who jump off where the lefty thing really not an issue for him. I have him 253 at bats. I think this goes back last year and then part of this year. 315 batting average, 395 on base percentage, 225 ISO. So everything looking good. And he's also just been raking to start the year as well. So no issue with Freddie Freeman as part of a stack. I probably wouldn't go to him as a one-off, but it could be a contrarian one-off play. And Vargas can get beaten up by anybody. He's actually, is he worse? No, he strikes out lefties even less than he does righties. So that's something to note. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't have any problem with that. And the Mets side, which Mets are you getting the most? I'm not on a ton of Mets at all today, even though I do like the guys. And I could see going to Alonso, but he just feels like he's due to come back down to earth. Which Mets do you have the most, D-Mac?
I have d'Arnaud at 20%, and that's a function of DraftKings. I need a catcher, and he's 3,300. He does have some pop, and he's batting fifth, so he should see 4 at-bats, have a shot at a 5th at-bat. So that's basically a price play. If they had not relaxed the pricing on catchers a little bit, he probably would be in there at 38 or 3,900. If this was last week, I doubt I would get more than 10% of him.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think at the price, like I did have Hundley in a lineup and I took him out. We'll talk about that game next, but you know, sometimes those cheap catchers can make it work and you just need him really just to hit one over the fence and that's enough. And if anybody's going to give up one over the fence to d'Arnaud, it is probably Newcomb, he's a confusing pitcher, can do things in various ways. Let's go, Emac, to Oakland and Texas. This one's a weather concern. What do we have the probability at? Let me check if that's been updated. We do have on our premium projections for all the premium members, obviously, we have a new feature there in which we are projecting or at least offering a chance of postponement. Before it was at 25% this game. It seems like it's come down. Oh, nope. It's gone up to 35% now. So that's not the best. I'm trying to get away from this one. I still have some Estrada right now. I have a couple of straggler Samson lineups, but those are really just ready to go at any moment. I'm avoiding to see Mac. What about you?
I have, and I just want to make sure my setting is correct. I have completely pulled it from my player pool. Now, the thinking, yep, perfect. I don't have anybody. So I went in and just unchecked everybody. I don't want to deal with it. The weather is very nice tomorrow. If they wanted to do a double header, then they could. The other thing is we'll see these teams play many more times this season because they're in the AL West. We already know that Oakland is coming back down. They can add a double header at that point. A lot of times at this time in the season, they don't really like to do double headers, particularly if the teams are interdivision rivals where they've got another series back in the city again, just because with pitchers not fully stretched out, it just becomes a little more tricky. Now, when you have double headers, you are allowed to add one pitcher to your roster, so quote the 26th man, but even then the guys down in the minor leagues aren't exactly stretched out either. So I'm guessing it's postponed, and I don't think they're going to run a doubleheader tomorrow. That's the way I'm leaning. So I'm fine not having any of this game. If this was clean weather, I would probably have more of this game than I do the Cincinnati and St. Louis one that is in Monterrey, Mexico.
Yeah, I still think, well, I guess I would have gotten there more with the bats. And, you know what? I wasn't dying for this one regardless today. It felt like a spot where I thought the pitchers might end up being a little bit more passable than it seemed with the totals. So I wasn't getting there. And yeah, I think I share your approach. I'm probably going to pull my Estradas and Samsons as we get closer to it. But yeah, for now, I think it just seems like one we don't need to talk much about if we want to avoid it. I guess if we were to play it, let's say it clears up in the next 30 minutes.
Let's hit on it briefly here. So if you watch, so I usually look at weather.com, weather in motion, and it just looks like there's a storm that's going to be hanging around. Now it's fringy enough that it could be, within 10 miles of the stadium if they're lucky. but it looks like it's going right over, and then there's no obvious breaks. Now, a lot of it is the fainter green that you see, which doesn't necessarily mean it's actually raining. It just means a higher chance of precipitation in that particular area. Once you get into the red, the yellow, the orange, etc., that's when you know it's just going to be raining the whole time. So if I were playing this one, I would look to Chapman, Davis, and Morales as my 3 favorite guys. And I would not hate on Piscotty, Profar, or Loreno. They all have power, and they're going against Sampson, who in his last, granted this is only his last 130 batters faced, is striking out just 15% of the opposition, and he has a 5.3 xFIP, so it's not very exciting. He has more fly balls, a little bit more than average. He has a little less ground balls than average, so he's just kind of a middling pitcher. And again, this is a 140 at bat sample size, but he's giving up 220 and 230 ISO to each side of the plate. So I would lean more towards the batters here. But hey, I'm the guy that's going with Homer Bailey, so your mileage may vary.
Well, that's the same thing, and that's generally my approach. Is when there's going to be a lot of ownership on a pitcher who looks pretty bad, I don't mind looking at other pitchers who are pretty bad. And Estrada too is a guy who I was a little more intrigued by Estrada than Sampson. I think I might have landed on him once or twice overall. Sampson, that is. Estrada, I think I have 3 or 4 out of 20 right now, and I thought it was a little more appealing spot just because the Rangers striking out a ton versus righties so far. Though Estrada is a rare player who's significantly worse versus righties than lefties, even though he's a righty. So I think overall Estrada appeals to me a little, but the stacks, I think, I think this one was going to be a little overowned if the weather were straight.
Yeah, so here's the other thing. I mean, they've got 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, so that's not blowing the outfield. It's generally windy in Texas, and their ballpark does a pretty good job of dealing with it, particularly since they. And this was, I think, 4 years ago. They used to have what we called the reverse jet stream. So if they had wind coming in from right center, it actually created it bounced off this huge plexiglass wall of fan protection and part of their not their announcing area, but I don't the good seats or whatever the bars or whatever that are back behind the home plate area. So it would kind of create a boomerang effect. So if you would hit the ball in the right spot, it would carry out even though the wind was blowing in. They took that down, so it's more or less neutralized that. The other thing where I think you're on the right spot here for Estrada is it's just 50 degrees there. So if there wasn't precipitation and it was just 50 degrees, it's decent enough that his fly balls hopefully would die on the warning track with while the Texas guys have power, outside of Gallo, they don't have just monster light tower power. They just have solid gap, some home run power. So,
yeah, it seems fair. So let's go on to the next one there. Actually, no, let's do home run picks. We are at the halfway point. Of course, every time in the halfway point of these Live Before Lock shows, we are giving our home run pick. Mostly a novelty, not really something that is super predictable with DFS, but it's predictable by some of us with massive brains. That includes both EMAC and myself, who are at a 33% on the year, which I'll take on. If we were both 33% hitters in the major leagues, we'd be doing fine. So I'll take that. I'm 3 for 9 on the year. EMAC is 1 for 3, so a little more limited sample size. And Josh, 1 for 8. Jake, the Chris Davis special. I guess that doesn't apply now, but 0 for 8 to start the year. So tough start for the baseball savant. EMAC, what are you doing? Let's talk some crap about Jake, but then EMAC, give me your pick.
Oh boy, I'm gonna go with Cody Bellinger.
I like that pick.
He's going against Zach Davies, and Zach Davies is a pitcher, but it's Zach with an H. So if you're Zach without a K, how can you be a pitcher? It's, I guess, that's my deep analysis. But he does have good power. I'm just looking this season because I always hate picking super duper high owned guys. It looks like he was off on a tear at the beginning of the season, just like everybody. He had 4 home runs in his first 4 games, 6 in his first 8, but he has had 1 in his last 6. So he's going to be on pace to get in the mid 30s, 4 home runs. This is not the best hitter's park, but I do like that matchup there with Davies.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I have a good amount of Bellinger. I support this Dodgers stack today. They are just mashing. I mean, they're really mashing everything, but they're not striking out so far this year versus righties, and everybody's hitting well. And Bellinger really hitting at probably an unsustainable clip, but for now, it's really hard to go against them. So I'm with you on it. I'm going to go Ronald Acuna. I think it's a good spot for him. Even though we just talked about how Vargas is playable, I do think it's more likely he gets shelled. And if he does get shelled, Acuna will be the guy in there. So Ronnie Acuna, step on up.
Let's see. Someone is saying it's Cody Bellinger bobblehead night. Let's look at...
Oh, no. Is that in theme with your former output of content, Emac?
Oh, it could be. It's Dodgers promotional giveaway schedule. So sometimes these are hard to find quickly, but they do. Yep, it is Cody Bellinger bobblehead night tonight. I was not aware of that. That would not have influenced my pick. But that's just karma saying, good job, Emac, good job. And by the way, the other guy I was debating against was Ronald Acuna. So you chose wisely, I think, Chris.
There we go. All right. So yeah, I don't have a full, like, this guy's in this spot home run model like Josh, but in terms of home run probability on my chart, I have Bellinger is a 2.3% probability per at bat. So that would be a little bit higher on Josh's model because he goes for the entire game. And Acuna I have as an 11.2% probability. So it looks like I already won, Emac, if you want to just throw in your hat in there now. Or
yeah, and
the
one risky
flag.
The one risky part is Davies does a pretty decent job of ground balls. He's above average, but it's Bellinger, baby, and it's a bobblehead night. So that just validates everything I said.
Look, I mean, he might have 5 home runs for that bobblehead. You got to make it special for all the people showing up. All right, let's go to the next game, Emac. We do have a spot here with the Padres and the Diamondbacks. Merritt Kelly, Matt Strahm, two guys who really not the most known commodities, I guess, out there, but Merritt Kelly going to have some decent ownership on him. Strahm going to have a little bit more. Strahm also seems like a guy due for some positive regression, giving up a lot of walks and hits. But he's actually been missing bats at a decent rate, swinging strike rate at 10.5% to start the year, but just getting hit quite a bit so far. Seems like it should level out a little. I do have some Arizona stacks, though. I have actually decent swaths of both Kelly and Strahm. Not a lot of Padres. What about you, Emac?
So the roof is open. Just so everybody knows, it will be open again tomorrow as well. Let's see. First pitch here, it's going to be 83 degrees. There's a tiny bit of a breeze going out there to right field in the 4 to 7 mile an hour range. So more or less negligible on that one. But we know that when they closed the roof and the humidor that they put into practice last season, it does actually have a difference here on the runs. But again, that won't be the case tonight. So this should be a good one. The thing with Strahm is he came in a little bit more hyped than Merrill Kelly. I'm leaning a little bit more towards Kelly. Well, and this is not because he's had the better 2 starts or however many he has had this season, but just looking at the San Diego lineup, it's better, but there's pesky guys. Could they turn this lineup over with a bunch of singles and doubles? Yes. How many of these guys are we really worried about hitting home runs tonight? Probably Renfroe, maybe Machado, and then, if healthy, Fernando Tatis. I'm not really worried about the rest of the guys.
I put Reyes in there too.
Pardon?
Reyes in there too.
I like Reyes a little bit better against lefties, but yeah, Franmil does have a decent power, but they're not what I would say barely above average would be my take on that. Now Reyes, if he continues his pace, I'll be good with it. In his last 220 plate appearances against righties, he does have a 220 isolated power. He also has just a 330 WOBA and a 27% strikeout rate, just a 7.7% walk rate. So he's a little bit boom or bust, but I just don't see them quite turning into home runs consistently yet. But one guy that I was in shock of when I was looking at his numbers, maybe it was last week in a matchup, was Hunter Renfroe, who I always thought of was just amazing against lefties. He has some outstanding power against righties. He is a true home run hitter. So that would be the one guy I hope Kelly can work around. And if he gives up a home run, hey, as long as nobody's on base, I'll take it.
So yeah, I think Kelly's okay. I think Kelly's not going to get you a ton of strikeout upside here. I think he's one of those guys who, I guess he's been striking out in a limited sample size, only 22 at bats versus lefties, striking them out a little bit more. You know, that could come up, but swinging strike rate's not there for him. He's got a 7.1% swinging strike rate so far. The chase rate's a little better one, but I don't know that he's got the strikeout stuff that I'd want to see. But I think that I agree that there isn't super dangerous power on the Padres side, but I think he could be a death by 1,000 cuts night for him.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that would be my one caveat if you're paying that much for him. Like, I don't see strikeout upside. and you could just see him survive, but I don't know if that's enough. So he's playable, but not that great. Strom, I think, is at a price where he's worth taking some shots at, but that also not the most enthralling to me. I think if you're banking on him, you're banking on a swinging strike rate evening out. And that's sort of all that you would hope for Strom at his price. And if he gets a couple Ks there, and it's a Diamondbacks team who is cooling off a little bit, but still has some dangerous hitters in there overall. So yeah, I have no problem with the pitching. And I think on stack side, I would prefer the Diamondbacks.
All right.
Let's go to the next one. We got Milwaukee and the Dodgers. We got some questions about the Dodgers, which we'll hit on after this. But we do have Zach Davies, who Emac talked about up front. Not the most intimidating pitcher. The Dodgers also just fantastic versus righties so far this year. A lineup too of guys who are on a tear across the board for that lineup. Everybody besides AJ Pollock in today's lineup has been hitting well to start the year for the most part. And on the Milwaukee side, they've also been hitting extremely well versus lefties. It's going to be a bullpen day. Who knows if they're going to pivot around? And it's not a great run total supporting the Brewers. Just 4 runs projected for the Brewers today. So Emac, what are you getting here?
So in this one, it's more Dodgers than anything else. Let me get back to my little crunch here. With regards to the bullpen day, the guy that's starting for the Dodgers, I'm guessing he's going to go about 2 innings. He has pitched half a dozen times so far this season, and he has half a dozen innings. So I don't think he's really stretched out or in the way the Dodgers tend to coddle their pitchers, and the fact that they still have a decent number of relievers coming in behind him. I don't think we're going to see him for more than a couple, but it's hard to tell what they're going to come back with, which makes me just somewhat more tepid on the Brewers. And the ballpark shift for the Brewers isn't the best, but that did not answer your question. So let me get over to this game filtered. So it looks like I'm getting about 15 to 20% of the main 2 through 5 on the Dodgers, and I'm getting single digits on most of the Brewers.
Yeah, I didn't get to the Brewers much today, and there are ways that bullpen games can go south, but I just think overall I like to avoid bullpen games if I can. And if you are going to avoid, or if you are going to lean in on a bullpen game, I think the Brewers are a team to do it with. But there are just so many ways that they can manage around, and I think the Dodgers have shown they are willing to just be very creative with that and have strong analytics as well to prove that they're going to get the best possible matchup most times. So that worries me a little bit. Grandal's a one-off catcher, though. I think I have a decent amount of, and the revenge narrative did actually pay off in that first game versus the Dodgers yesterday. But really, I just think he's hitting really well to start the year, and he interests me as a catcher on a day where I really don't like any of the catchers out there. And I think your Dodgers exposure seems about right. I have a couple stacks both sides of the top 5 and the bottom 5 guys. And Bellinger is my most popular guy, but I also have a good amount of Seager and Turner as well. And I think that's about as deep as I'd go versus Zach Davies. Let's go to the last game, Emac. Houston and Seattle going to have a very popular Justin Verlander going against the Seattle team. Is projected for just 3.7 runs. Verlander not pitching that great to start the year, but obviously you would expect that to level out. Not missing bats too well, but he is overall a strong pitcher. As I'll go on a limb and say Justin Verlander, a pretty solid pitcher. And for Houston, their bats going against Felix Hernandez, who's also starting the year pretty poorly, not missing bats at all, looking pretty over the hill, at least on a numbers perspective so far. Not giving up home runs either, but seems like he's due to get really shellacked. I like the Astros, but didn't get there that much. And I did get to quite a bit of Mariner stacks against Verlander to just hedge against my Verlander exposure. But I am under the field on Verlander. What are you doing? What are you thinking about Big Justin here?
So I'm going to be probably 15 to 20% above the field on Verlander. I'm not getting any Felix Hernandez, but I don't think it's a slam dunk spot for Houston. Felix left his last game with stomach ailment, or the fact that he had given up a couple runs in his first turn.
That'll make my stomach hurt too.
Yeah, so we'll see. I just dropped in chat. I wrote up a whole big thing. Obviously I'm a Mariners fan, or I don't know if it's obvious, but I attended the first game in the Kingdome way back in 1977 when I was a little kid with my dad. And so I've been a lifelong Mariners fan because I grew up in the state of Washington, even though now I live in Washington, D.C., which confuses the hell out of everybody. But they do have what's called the King's Court there. And every time he starts, they have a particular section down the right field side where they have they give out everybody these yellow T-shirts, and they all hold up signs. And whenever he's getting ready to pitch, they're chanting K, K, K for King Felix and for a strikeout. And he gets jacked up. I don't know how much that's going to help him against this lineup tonight, but it wouldn't surprise me if he if he manages to muddle through 5 innings, giving up 3 runs with a couple of strikeouts. So that is, not the best situation for the Astros. When we look at 7 pardon me, in the other 7 games we have, there's probably 4 teams I like better, but it's not a horrid matchup for them either.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Verlander, I think it's just worth, like, we've seen it enough times now. Carrasco getting blown up and gone after 2 innings, not even 2 innings yesterday.
Yeah.
So, and I shit my money also talks about a lot in the deeper dive shows where, it's baseball, anything can happen. And I think this Mariners lineup has been hitting so well to start the year. Jay Bruce, player, you got Vogelbach in there, who's also just mashing everything. Big boy, bringing a big bat. So I don't mind going to some Mariners. I'd probably oversack them a little bit, but I think a little taste of them, given just how chalky Verlander is going to be, does seem about right. But getting close to Verlander also seems about right, just because the upside's there, and he's really the only guy with a decent Vegas total supporting him today.
Yeah, and then I see somebody was asking about with the Mariners bullpen. So RJ Alanis and Sean Armstrong and Cody Guerin, all 3 of them went last night. It was back-to-back for Cody Guerin. I doubt we'll see him tonight. But Brandon Brennan has not pitched for a day. Connor Sadzek has not. And then Roines Elias would be the guy that would come in and clean up a mess if Felix gets knocked out in the 3rd inning. But he and Swarzak haven't pitched for 2 days. So their bullpen, they've got some arms that are ready to go. But again, these are recent World Series champion Houston Astros here.
Yep. So I think that covers it. Let's go to Greek Ink's question. We'll go back to the last game. But we also will take your questions both in YouTube and the premium Slack. And of course, if you're not a premium member, use that promo code live before lock. Get all the MLB content. We do have night slate content. We have a ton of stuff going on. We also have NBA playoff content, including rankings and ownership projections. So if you want to get an all sport package, NHL playoff content as well, that's all going on. NASCAR, PGA, it's every sports in full bloom. MMA, we got really, as EMAC did above, I forgot that there's so many different sports we have going on. But go check it out with promo code live before lock. And get the premium Slack access too. That was the main point of that. The Dodgers stack, EMAC, or the Braves stack, which of the 2 would you prefer?
I'd go with the Braves. I'd just take a chance, or weather's a little bit better. And if you weigh everything out, even though I did take my home run against Zach Davies, he is decent with the ground balls. So you want guys that are going to get in trouble with runners on base. Guys that are ground ball pitchers, you always have the double play that can bail them out. And that's something I think a lot of people overlook from time to time.
Yeah, I think for me, I would. So I just think Vargas is due a bounce back. And I think the Dodgers are hitting so well that I would be slightly more inclined for the Dodgers for tournament play, just because they're less owned. And I think there's more potential there. But for cash, though, I think the Braves would be a safer play. Because Vargas, we know Vargas has a lot of bad to him. that's probably enough for cash to get there. So I think the Braves are safer, but the Dodgers would be a tournament play that people will be less on by a pretty decent margin.
Yep, I think that's completely fair.
Let's go to the YouTube chat. Got a question. People asking thoughts about Newcomb. Is it Bobby Biz in particular? Is Newcomb getting rocked? We talked about this before, but we'll circle back because I'm sure a lot of people are curious about Newcomb as the high-priced alternative to Verlander on DraftKings in particular, and a lot of the sites actually. I think Newcomb is okay. I'm playing him. I think I do have some concern. The Mets are a better hitting team than people realize to start the year. And Newcomb just starting the year really poorly. And just to go back to his numbers, under 5% swinging strike rate, 25% chase rate. Both of those would be amongst the lowest on the slate overall to start the year. Actually, the only one a little bit lower in terms of swinging strike rate would be Jason Vargas on the other side. So that's fun. Matchup that could have a lot of scoring, but I think Newcomb is more inclined to bounce back, and the Mets have struck out enough versus lefties that I think there's some potential. So I'm comfortable with Newcomb as much as I can be as a pivot, but yeah, besides that, it won't shock me if he blows up.
Yeah,
your Newcomb take one more time.
Yeah, on Verlander, I think I would just echo what you had said. I think on FanDuel, if you can get the Verlander, that's what you want to do in this one. The chance of the win is high, and it's, even though the Mariners are leading the league in runs per game, come on, they're not going to be that awesome forever. Not everybody's going to be on a hot streak at the same time. So the second guy I would look to would be Newcomb. On FanDuel, you're getting about a 30% discount. It's $2,800, so that's fairly sizable. So that would be fair. if I wasn't going to go to Verlander. And I don't have lineups on FanDuel tonight. I usually try to play there a couple times a week, but I don't have any tonight.
Yep. And we did get another ownership update just a minute ago. So if you want to check that on your premium member, I won't spoil it for you, but some of the pitchers have gone down a bit further, and some of the hitters have come up quite a bit. People really seem to be gravitating towards Yasiel Puig and Paul DeJong in particular as the top owned hitters. It's scary. I really don't have enough exposure to those games. I think now that Cardinals and Reds game. It's worrying me, Mac. What's worrying you right now out of your crunches? What are you afraid? I guess you could still tweak things, but out of the latest crunch that you've done, what are you seeing that's giving you the most pause, and what are you trying to fix?
Well, I'm pausing because half the screen didn't show up when I hit it. So
that would help out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are crunching right now. So this one will be just finished in a second here, but oh, weird. It's not displaying my percentage ship that I have. That's not good.
That'd be helpful.
It would be. It looks. Oh, I need to just reframe this in a new browser. For those of you that are having issues sometimes with Cruncher, if you open a new browser instance, like not just a new tab, it'll help a little bit, because if you've got a lot of tabs open and you don't restart your computer for a couple days in a row, see, okay, it brought it back by me opening it to a new one. So let me run my Crunch again here and see. But I think just, I don't know. It for me. Oh God, now it's crapping out. Awesome.
Cruncher not helping out. Poor Emax trying to get his lineups in.
Cruncher not making me happy. Oh, okay, we'll fix this. See, it's good. We've got 15 minutes. There's no reason to panic.
No, of course not. Why would there be? You're
right.
fine.
Now I'm doing all right. Okay, so although I may have to go and reset my pitching percentages because I changed. Oh no, it's good. Okay, so coming in here, I'm getting I allowed it to go to 70% on Verlander. I'm not getting there as much. I'm getting about 50, which is where the field was on my last update. I'm getting Merrill Kelly's coming a little higher than I would like. He's coming in at 50, so I'm gonna influence that down a little bit. Newcomb's coming in at 20. Homer Bailey's coming in at 40, which I'm fine with. All of a sudden, I'm getting some Jeffrey Rodriguez, so I need to adjust that because I really don't want him on my team. But there we are.
All right. And I am currently, I'm making the executive decision for all of us. So just mostly myself. You can play it however you want, but I'm getting rid of my Estrada and my very limited Estrada and my very limited, what's his face on the other side? Samson on the other side. Not a guy I wanted anyway. So I'm okay getting off of him regardless.
That is fair. And let me pull.
Yeah, somebody posted the weather, the most recent weather picture, I guess, or what is the name of the green and yellow thing? There's like a fancy name for it.
The Doppler radar.
Doppler radar.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the radar for that game looking extra bad. A lot of red and yellow swarming in around Arlington. So I think it's just where we are in the hour. I'm ready to get off of it.
And I will be doing the same here, as I'm going to load the projections and ownership and do one last crunch, and then we'll be locked.
Bo Jones asking, is Newcomb starting or Tehran? I think that is obvious start for Newcomb. Bo, you might want to update your information, I think. Whatever source you're getting, I would think you should update that. It's been Newcomb for a while now. What? I'm not going to give you a shout out because of that request. Don't be needy, Bobby. Don't be needy. Bellinger and Albies or Pete Alonso and Altuve?
I'll take the first one.
Yep. I'm actually more on that side too. So Matthew Prodwell, I agree. Bellinger and Albies.
Tehran is pitching tomorrow against DeGrom, for what it's worth.
Okay, so a day early, Bo, but tomorrow you'll be ready. You'll be extra prepared for Julio Tehran's big moment in the spotlight. Domingo Santana and Bellinger or Chris Davis and O'Hearn. Which one would you go with, Mac?
I'm going to go with the first one because I'm not playing anybody from the Texas game. Just be ready to have a pivot. You've got another hour after lock before that game locks. But just that makes me nervous enough to not be there on it.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think and Domingo Santana and Bellinger also honestly might have been my pick either way.
Yeah, and my other, I would agree with that. The other thing is, I'm not afraid to go to these weather games. I embrace it and just say, you know what, if it happens, or if it's a questionable and then it gets rained out and you were taking a chance, you just think of it as the opposing pitcher just shutting down your team. So baseball's a long season, but this one I think is risky enough, and the fact that they're going to play that Oakland's coming back again later this season, it's just too easy for them to do a postponement.
Yeah, I would agree. It just overall doesn't seem like it's worth the risk involved, and I think that's why we're both on that page. And yeah, I agree. Usually I'll let it ride, and I think if you're watching these streams, you've certainly seen enough times where Jake or Josh and I have debated it, and I'm usually down to let things ride. But the pitchers, especially, I don't see having any particular reason to get value. And yeah, I think overall it's time to jump out of that one. And if you stay in there and you win a tournament, then bless your heart, bless your heart for being stronger than all of us and somehow knowing something we didn't. So X out Houston. No, yeah, I think somebody corrected El Negro Loco in the premium Slack, but no, Houston is not the issue. It is the other Texas team.
Yeah, Houston is in Seattle, and there's no rain, and even if there was, they do have the convertible roof.
Sean, oh, here we go. Sean V, our boy, who said, we always appreciate being in the chat. He is going with Kelly and Newcomb, and those are two guys I do have a good amount of. And I think if you are afraid of Verlander, they are the two that I would go with. So Sean V, it hurts me to say it this week, but we're back on the same page. So I am also pretty strongly, I think Kelly and Newcomb are an interesting pair in terms of their opportunity here. Let's see. Okay. Despite different positions, EMAC, would you go Corey Seager or Marcell Ozuna for FanDuel?
Corey Seager. I prefer the platoon advantage for him. And even though you said Osuna, or Ozuna, yep. Not, yeah. And even though Ozuna's batting cleanup and it's righty, and he's okay against righties, I prefer Seager.
We've got Ozuna projected a little better. I have more Seager. But for FanDuel, I think, is the pricing better? Is that why? Yeah. Yeah, yeah, he's actually pretty cheap. Yeah, I think I would go Ozuna for FanDuel. Yeah, I think that's, I also, I might be me overcompensating a little bit for the fact that I just don't feel like I have enough Cardinals and Reds right now, but I think that I would go Ozuna. I feel like he's got a little more safe potential there. And the weather is probably more beneficial, and if compared to a hitter's park for the Dodgers, or excuse me, a pitcher's park. Reading questions, no good on Slack. You guys like Kelly? I don't know that I honestly. Is there a pitcher you actually like on the slate? I guess maybe beside Justin Verlander.
Besides Verlander, no. I've got Kelly and Newcomb both capped at 30%. That's what I'm getting of them. I just capped Homer Bailey at 40%, and then I don't have anybody more than 10. So I'm kind of going ride or die with that group of pitchers. And the reason I've got the cheap guys is I need to counterbalance the two expensive guys to still get in decent stacks.
Yeah.
That consists of the 2 through 4 or 2 through 5 hitters and not a bunch of 7, 8, and 1 guys.
Yeah, I like Kelly in terms of his potential to not get blown up. And I think that's sort of as much as I'm looking for. Like, I also like Sean Newcomb, but if you told me one of these pitchers is going to destroy today, we do have about the exact same projection, though, for whatever that's worth. At least on the most recent update I have in my sheet. But I think I would go Newcomb because I think he's got a little more upside in terms of strikeouts and all that. Merritt Kelly, I think, is more the safer option, more of the Mikolas kind of, or I always say that, Michaelis, whatever, how you pronounce the Cardinals pitcher's name, where he's just not going to blow you up. Wade Miley, similar player as well, not going to just get destroyed today. And Newcomb could very well get destroyed, but he could also have 10 Ks, and I think both outcomes are more in range. Yeah. Let's see. Vogelbach will dong off Verlander. I don't think you're wrong. I think Verlander's got some risk going against a good Mariners lineup. How much Vogelbach you got, EMAC?
Not very much.
Shameful. Support the big boys.
Yeah, I've got a little more Markakis than I would have liked to have had, but as we're coming down to lock here, I'm going to be letting that ride. So
it's tough with a guy with no power, but he could rack up a bunch of hits easily. It is Vargas on the other side.
He did have that five hit game not that long ago.
Yeah, that was a nice one. I was on the board. I was actually on him a pretty decent clip for that one, and it was really nice because nobody ever plays Markakis.
Yes, that is true.
Probably for a good reason, I guess.
He is
Turner or Donaldson on FanDuel. Which would you go with?
Donaldson for sure. I love him in the righty-lefty matchups. We've forgotten because he was hurt for the better part of the last year in Toronto, but he is so good against lefties.
Yeah, I think I would also go with Donaldson there. I think Turner's a good play as well, and I actually am about even on both, but I think that Donaldson's probably the stronger and probably safer play as well. All right, questions there. Kane possibly a stud, a bullpen night. I think bullpen nights tend to not favor hitters generally, and the Dodgers bullpen is pretty good, so I would be more inclined. Is it pretty good? It's not bad. I guess it's actually not pretty good. Yeah, maybe you're right. You might be right, Bobby.
Bullpen games when you're like the Dodgers or, for instance, the Brewers last year, they favor the bullpen. Those guys don't have to throw as long; they can throw harder. It's, I don't know, just food for thought.
Yeah, so the bullpen just not getting a lot of strikeouts and also giving up a good amount of hits. So I mean, obviously that it is a bullpen, so you're right that it should generally favor them because they are going to be a little fresher, and you're seeing a different look each time if they are swapping and switching guys around. But the bullpen to me looking not the best, not getting a ton of swinging strikes as a unit and not striking guys out. So, look, it's going to be contrarian if you go to the Brewers today, and the Brewers have a ton of power. So, and just a ton of great hitters across the board. So if you want to go there, I certainly don't hate it. Puig or Schebler? Which would you go with, Emac?
Oh, good. We have till 7:10 tonight. Nice. I'm about ready to upload my lineup. Puig or Schebler? I'm going to lean towards Puig just because he can also steal bases. Schebler is absolutely fine when he has the platoon advantage, but for me, I'm going to go with Yasiel Puig.
Yeah, I think I would also favor Puig. I guess the tournament upside would be that you're getting Schebler at about 14% less based on our most recent ownership projections for DraftKings. So I think that could be interesting if you're stacking them in a different way and avoiding the highest owned guy in the stack. But I think Puig on paper looks like the better play. More of a game theory play to go to Schebler. What do you think of Tyler Naquin as a one-off value play for Cleveland? I don't hate him, and I have a good amount of Naquin. So I support anybody going against Homer Bailey. Emac, what do you think?
So Jake and I had this conversation in the earlier show. I had always thought that Naquin had more power than he did, and so I made some comments about him, and then I think it was last night he hit a home run. He's okay. He doesn't scare me for his price. He's completely fine, and I don't mind it.
Yeah, on the year he's actually had a ton of power. 323. Actually, no, I'm reading that wrong. You know what? Never mind. But a better ISO, 194 ISO versus a 106 versus a righties in general. So yeah, he's been hitting with a little more power this year, but not enough where he's suddenly a power guy.
Right. But and to be clear, I mean, he does. I don't have his numbers up, but I think that, like, if you go back through last year, it was like 160. So I mean, it's still above a replacement player. I was expecting it to be like 190, not getting to the elite 200 range, but one of those. Yeah, here's a guy I'll take because he's cheap, and when he gets in the lineup in a favorable spot, he might run into one. Which apparently is my phrase of the day because I think I've said that like 5 times. But that is, when I was looking deeper into his numbers, I did not have that same warm, fuzzy feeling. But it's baseball. Lots of things happen. You can have a cold streak for, half a season and et cetera. But he should be getting more regular playing time now with, 4 of their regulars no longer with the team in Alonso, Encarnacion, and Lindor, and Kipnis being hurt. And Brantley's out. So he's going to get playing time. We'll have to see if he can make that next step.
Yeah, I have him going back to last season, 198 at bats versus righties, 106 isolated power. So I don't mind him as part of a stack, but yeah, I guess it's a one-off. Probably not enough power to be worth it, unless you just really think all the boats rise along with a bad day for Homer Bailey. And I don't hate that approach either because I think Homer Bailey is gonna get his butt kicked today. Let's see what we got. Thoughts on Chris Taylor? I feel like we talked about it a little bit, but Emac as part of the Dodgers, I guess, as a one-off or as part of a stack. What would you do with Chris Taylor, moving down the order a little bit?
He's okay as a stack. I prefer him against lefties, but in the absence of Corey Seager last year, he really acquitted himself and showed that he is a good all-around hitter. And as a Mariner fan, I'm lamenting he's no longer with them. Much like they don't have Ketel Marte and a few other guys that they gave up on, but not overly excited about him tonight. If he's ever against a lefty, the answer almost always for me is going to be Chris Taylor. So I do like him and think he's good. Plus the fact that he can play multiple positions, he generally won't get pinch hit for because he can shift around. And as they pinch hit or do double switches, he has the ability to play infield and outfield. So that's always something helpful when Dave Roberts is getting creative.
Well, at least even though you don't have Chris Taylor on the Mariners, you do have Tim Beckham, so that's fun.
He's finally, as long as he faces lefties every day, it'll be good.
Yeah, that might cool down a little bit more. You can already see like his numbers to start the year were like amazing, and now they're slowly trickling down, but still strong for now. So hopefully he hangs in there for your sake, Emac, if nothing else.
Is it bad that I'm continuing to enter more contests?
Hey, it's Saturday. Get wild, Emac.
The wife's out of town. I got to pick her up at the airport tomorrow, but there we are. Tonight's me and the dog and leftover pizza. So there we are.
Ooh, so there, look, yeah. So you got to get a little adventure in your life. You get leftover pizza. Just get some more lineups out there. Get wired with it. Go with some stacks against Homer Bailey, huh? Maybe you'll enjoy that.
You know, I really should have built one. So whatevs. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Brad Miller, anyone? Brad Miller, is he in? He might be in one of my lineups.
I actually have a fair number of Cleveland stacks, and I did a bunch of 3-3s and 5-3s, so I've got a few Cleveland stacks that'll help me out as long as it's the right 3 people. If Homer Bailey does falter.
Yeah, the bottom of the Cleveland order, not the most appealing. Like Max Moroff, like I like doing a wraparound stack as part of my stacks when I really want to target a pitcher, and Moroff is just so bad. It's so bad overall. At least, in a limited sample size, 55 at bats versus a righty. He's been really just terrible, and start the year also been terrible. So, Miller, you want to get to as a catcher, I'm okay, or as a second baseman rather, or Plawecki as a catcher. I think those guys are okay, but I would be reluctant to go down to Moroff too much. Anybody get hit versus Bailey though, so why not? Do you guys think Yahoo match rating is accurate?
I haven't utilized it, but I'm pretty sure it is. Because remember, it's supposed to be matching people of a similar skill set as yours. Sorry, my dog wants to go out of the room now. They should be matching people against a similar recent form, if I'm understanding what they're trying to do correctly. So it means you should, if you've been on a hot streak over the last couple of weeks, you'll probably get some better players. If you've been cold, in theory, and you can go see what your rating is in there. As well. I think I'm assuming where it says platinum, gold, silver, diamond, whatever that is. I think that's your current rating. So I believe it is because they have no reason to not make it something enticing to get their season long guys to pop over there and play. So
yeah, especially as the site meant to be a little more player friendly in terms of the various approaches there. And that's not even a plug for Yahoo, even though they are technically a sponsor of many of our shows. That is their approach overall with no management fees and stuff to try to be a little more player friendly. So I would presume that's accurate. Chris Robideau asking, what is PLR on a player on DraftKings? That is he projected long reliever. So in that game with who is pitching for the Dodgers, I forget because I don't have any exposure. For Caleb Ferguson, he'll show up as like PO because he's a projected opener. And then the PLR is whoever is the projected long reliever. But I don't know how trustworthy that is for a lot of teams.
I wouldn't. And it used to last year, of course, it was for Tampa Bay because they sort of invented this strategy. Yep. Well, hell yeah, was it? I've lost track of days again. Yeah, yesterday they both Yarbrough and Chirinos pitched 3 innings each, and neither one was the opener. Neither one was the probable long reliever because they both went 3 innings. So I don't think you can trust it anymore. And I think the teams are doing that by design because they just if they're using this to their advantage, why say who it's going to be? This is more teams are doing this. If you hear it's a quote bullpen game, which teams have done since the beginning of time, whenever people have been hurt or they're coming off a doubleheader, or it's Sunday and everybody's hungover, whatever it is, nobody ever questioned when teams were having a bullpen day, and all of a sudden they do this opener thing and everybody gets keyed up about it.
Yeah, I would talk about it at some length yesterday with Jake, but in general, I don't like trusting long reliever things because I was burned by it by Tampa, and Tampa really has much news out there as any of these teams will, like Emac mentioned, in terms of the opener and who's coming after. And there were a couple times last year it burned me with somebody reminded me, I think it was our guy E-Rush in the chat, if I'm remembering correctly. It's like it was Matt Andreezy who had some days where he was going to be the guy expected and then wasn't the guy. And Jalen Beeks as well had a day where he was going to be the guy and then he wasn't the guy. I think the Dodgers in particular, I'd be really reluctant to choose that because I just don't think it's predictable for many of the teams who are using an opener right now. Which three
Remember, you
stats do you?
well,
Sorry, go ahead.
just we've got NASCAR that's going to lock in 22 minutes here. If you've forgotten about that, a bunch of guys failed tech, so the projections have been updated. So what this means is this is an impound race, but just to save everybody time, they went through. You have 3 chances to go through your technical inspection, and if you fail, you're moved and scored from the back of the pack. So a lot of times when you move to the back, is you got a blown engine, you had to replace the transmission, something happened, you're still scored from wherever you qualified. This one's one of the races where you're scored from where you start. So all of a sudden it popped up with a whole bunch of good drivers that went to the back. So if you've made your lineups, double check where you're at on that, because some of the guys that were starting towards the back and we thought were good plays have now been bumped up 6 spots because of all the people that went backwards.
And Scuba Steve, I don't know if you misspelled Scuba or if this is some sort of branding choice for you. What 3 stats do you guys find the most important when choosing a pitcher? I think it's hard to single out 3, but if I had to, looking at the sheet that I use primarily to reference, I would lump swinging strike rate and chase rate into, or swinging strike percentage and chase percentage into the same. I think those are helpful to find out if a pitcher is missing batters on his own or if it's just kind of a function of however he's getting outs. Because that will tell you if the hitters aren't making contact, then you're going to be fine for the most part, or at least you hope you'll be fine. I also look at home run percentage and overall the whip / however many hits and balls they're giving up. That's just a general idea of how much production they're allowing to the other side and the risk involved of rostering them. Is there anything that I missed there, EMAC, that you look for a pitcher?
If I'm looking to target against a pitcher, I look at their strikeout and walk rate, and I want it to be high. I'm hoping they don't have a great ground ball rate, and I want their hard hit rate to be high, and home run fly balls. So a lot of those kind of are interchangeable, so it's not just 3. But you want to remember, in the projections, it accounts for all of this. In addition to it, our projections are based off how many batters we think guys are going to face. So it's not just, it's going to be this. It's all that stuff broken down. Who are they playing against? Where are those guys in the order? How many at bats are batters are they going to face? And then it starts adding up all that stuff. So the projections are incredibly complex and take into account all of that. So to think you're just going to cruise in and swag and say, I think this one's wrong, is not going to work. Now, with regards to projections, it's distilled into one number. There is a range of outcomes that can happen. And it doesn't always take into account. And I don't know what's in our model, and I know that we have a lot more variables than a lot of people. But, the basic models don't take into account weather and stuff like that. We do, I'm almost positive, for heat and also ballpark location. But that's almost baseline for everybody now when you're building out your projections. But they really do take everybody in the lineup, how they are against righties and lefties if you're looking at batters. How long is the starting pitcher going to go? Who do we think is the more likely reliever coming in? Meaning, is it going to, if it's a team that has a lot of righties in the bullpen, we'll project it to be righties for the rest of the game. If it's a team that has a lot of lefties, we'll project them against lefties. If it's a mix, then we'll just kind of split it in half and go from there. But that's what goes into the projections behind the scenes. It's not just pushing a button and running them. It's a pain in the ass, having done them and manning the model for the better part of August and all weekends when I was at FanVice. It's like, geez Louise, we got a lot of stuff to go through here. So
I agree. Like usually when you find these stats that support like a pitcher being, having a decent probability of getting blown up or having a good day, you're going to find the projections usually pretty closely in line with it. So EMAC's right. The projections generally do account for everything, but I think it's also helpful. Like for me, like I color code my sheet so I could see red wherever guys are particularly bad. So like Homer Bailey, a lot of orange. It looks like a young Garfield with the amount of orange over Homer Bailey everywhere. And I think that's sort of what I try to find is I look for those spots first, and then kind of back into projections. And it just helps me at least fully to figure things out, but different approaches for different folks.
Yeah. And by the way, I still look at where the people are in projections and then I make my decisions, but that's how many of these guys am I going to play? What is the field doing? It just takes it to that next level. So there's just so many moving parts with baseball that just distilling it to, somebody asked me, what's the one thing you look at for hitters? There is no one thing. I mean, I guess isolated power if I had to pick one thing, but that doesn't tell me if the guy's getting on base, which gives him a chance to score a run, or, how is he going to get on base? Can he steal? All this other stuff. So just looking at one number in baseball doesn't work. I wish it would, but it doesn't.
Yeah. It's not the sport for that. You got to really look at everything as kind of a total picture, and then projections will be the guide point. One last item from the Maharishi in our premium Slack. I just want to give him a shout out saying death, taxes, and Johan Camargo versus a lefty. I have supported that theory in the past, though he did kind of level out a little bit versus lefties down the stretch of last year. So I have some of him, but not a ton. I also have some Alex Jackson. I really covered my butt with Jason Vargas.
I had Jackson pop up in my lineups, and at first I was like, Austin Jackson still in the league?
Who he's probably
who is this
Japan
guy
somewhere. Yeah, Alex Jackson, I don't know who he is. He has not done anything of note in the majors, but Jason Vargas can certainly give it up real nice to him, I'm sure, if it lines up correctly. Ugh, terrible. All right, that covers everything. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for the kind words, Bobby Biz and Sean V in the YouTube chat right now. We appreciate you guys as well. Hit that like button on the way out. Of course, if you are a premium member, check the ownership projections for the night slate and any other content this weekend. As Emac mentioned, we have a ton of sports going on right now. So go check out the projections, the ownership projections, all the data that we have available for you guys to help build better lineups. Use that promo code Live Before Lock if you want to get half off your first month on any package. And Emac, any parting words before we go call it quits for this Saturday?
Before I hit the little button, just know that they moved up the start time of the Masters tomorrow to 7:30 Eastern to try to avoid some of the incoming weather. So, if you're just playing the weekend slate, that the 2-day one, that's already locked. But if you're playing single game on the West Coast, probably want to set your lineups tonight. On the East Coast,
wait,
don't
7:30 a.m.
Yeah, don't sleep in on the East Coast because you're gonna miss
it.
it.
I'm supposed to go watch the round at a bar with a friend, and when does that start?
Mimosas, Josh. Mimosas. Well, the bars won't even be open, I guess. Well, do they ever close in LA? I guess that's the first.
No, they do. They close very early. They close at 2 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah, we're the same thing as DC. Yeah, it's weird. New York is really the only place. I miss New York because everything is just open forever in perpetuity.
All right, but with that, gamers, we're going to get on out of here. I got to go fix my NASCAR lineup, so good luck.